On the 4th of July 2020 in Islington, North London, a playground was shut down after police had to tape it off, following a shooting that resulted in the murder of 22-year-old Imani Alloway. Now, 2 years later, 2 people have been convicted of his murder and several others for their involvement. When Dave Nathan went to the crime scene, you could see markings where bullet casings had been, and the men opened fire in broad daylight, and it was even caught on CCTV. The audio of the shooting was heard in court. Imani was shot 4 times, and he died inside the playground. He wasn't directly shot there, but he made his way through the alleyway and died in the playground. They revealed during the case this was because of revenge, but it was actually a mistake as well. Imani had nothing to do with what had occurred earlier in that day. A man called Demetrius Kyriacou, 35 years old, was the victim of a robbery. At approximately 10 to 1, 4 unknown men approached him on Carville Street, and he suffered head injuries, and his Rolex watch, money and iPhone were stolen. The suspects drove off in a black BMW. Police attended the scene and spoke to him inside his blue Range Rover, and he said he believed the suspects had a knife, but he didn't know them, and he didn't wish to speak about it any further. But Dimitri didn't leave it at that. Dimitri held a grudge, and he wanted revenge. Following the robbery, arrangements were made with friends of his to meet up at a home address on the 6 acres estate in Islington. This is also where Dimitri was living at the time. He then used the Find My iPhone app to try to locate it, and they drove to the area where it was circled. They also collected a loaded firearm along the route. Dimitri and Reese were last to arrive in the area shortly before 3:20 on the 4th of July. They got out of the blue Range Rover on Faraday Close and went down an alleyway where a group of people and the stolen property was located. Seconds later, a man called Reese shot Imani 4 times on Romand Way. They ran back to the Range Rover and to the other vehicles, who had also come with them to the scene. A man called Nicholson would later collect the gun from Reese and dispose of it, and the murder weapon was never discovered by police. The London Ambulance Service and an air ambulance attended the scene and found Imani lying in the children's playground 20 metres from where he'd been shot. He was unconscious but breathing, and despite the best efforts of emergency services, he died at 10 to 4 on the same day. Police searched the area and found 14 bullet casings, as well as an iPhone, 2 Nokia mobiles, and a snapped SIM card. The phones and the SIM card belonged to Dimitri, and they formed part of the stolen property that had been taken earlier in the day. One of the phones was found in a drain, and this is why they believed that they shot Imani, because he was near to it, but they determined, maybe through his own phone location, that he had nothing to do with the robbery. The black BMW that was also used in the robbery was found at the scene, and they established that Imani had arrived at the scene at exactly the same time that Dimitri and Reese appeared, and they opened fire on him simply because he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. The judge said that it was Reese who discharged the firearm and took Imani's life, but the other defendants were jointly responsible for his death, and in different ways they all assisted and encouraged the commission of the offence. Dimitri, Reese, Hardy and Dredge were all arrested in July 2020, shortly after the murder, and Nicholson was arrested in 2021. They were all charged with murder and were convicted earlier this week. Dimitri was found guilty of murder. James Nicholson, the man who had moved the gun, was found not guilty of murder but guilty of manslaughter. Nathaniel Reese, 41, the man who had shot him dead, was found guilty of murder after a 2-day trial. Detective Chief Inspector Neil John said Imani was a young man with his whole life ahead of him. He was in the wrong place and he was tragically murdered because of a misunderstanding and for revenge that he had nothing to do with. Definitely is a big reminder of how easy it is for people to try to get revenge, and also how many mistakes can come from it, and something as simple as the watch that drew some attention to him that resulted in this whole situation unfolding. So my condolences to the family and friends of Imani, and I really appreciate you following this story for the past 2 years and all of the support that you've given for the channel. Please don't forget to follow me online as well at Scarcity Studios on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and Facebook, and I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Peace.